Hi, this is Dan Heisman, and this is Improve Your Chess. Today, we're going to do an amateur game. I think it's very helpful for people to review amateur games as well as master games. When you're reviewing master games, you get a good vision of what kind of things you should be doing and what kind of things would look right on a chessboard, and that way you develop your good board vision. This particular game comes from the Team 45-45 League, the primary slow league that's played on the ICC. 45-45 meaning that each player has 45 minutes for the game, but they also get 45-second increment for each move. This has a tendency to remove all time scrambles at the end because each player will have at least 45 seconds for each move, and thus the games are decided on the board and not by a time scramble at the end of the game. If you're more interested in the Team 45-45 League, you can Google Team 45-45 Chess and their website will pop up. Okay, today's game is between two intermediate players. You can see their ratings on the right side of the board. What we're trying to emphasize is looking for the mistakes that the players are making, why they're mistakes, how you could avoid making such a mistake, and possibly what you would do in that situation as well. So we're not really trying to find the truth of the situation. We're trying to mostly look at the game for instruction. So let's get right to it. White plays e4, black plays French defense, and here white of course has four main ideas. He can play knight c3 classical, knight d2 Tarrasch, e takes d5 exchange variation or e5 advanced variation. Among grandmasters, knight c3 is played about half the time, and probably the second most common is knight d2 Tarrasch. However, at amateur level, I see that most of my students don't play knight d2 or knight c3 nearly as often as grandmasters do. They tend to immediately think they should gain space with e5, which is played much, much more often at the amateur level than it is at the grandmaster level, or they play e takes d5, which again is played much more often at the amateur level. If you're going to play the French for white, I highly suggest you don't play e5 because that's one of the harder ways to play the French for white. It requires the most way of avoiding defensive play against the d4 square, and therefore my suggestion is that you play one of the other three lines, e takes d5, knight c3, or knight d2. Not that there's anything wrong with e5, but it's very easy if you don't know what you're doing to get into some trouble with that. In this particular game, white chose to play the exchange variation, which as I said was very popular at the amateur level, not very popular at the grandmaster level because it's considered so drawish. Okay, white plays bishop to d3, one of the main lines. The main lines are bishop d3, knight f3, or c4. Black plays bishop d6, a symmetric move, perfectly okay. He could also follow the principle knights before bishops and play knight f6. I believe in this game black had the idea of following John Watson's suggestion that if white plays normal moves, he's going to castle queenside. Whenever your opponent sacrifices a piece for a pawn like this, he's raising a big, big, big red flag in front of you that says, this is a super critical position. If you don't take my knight, I'm just going to win a pawn for nothing. And if you do take my knight, I've calculated that maybe I can do something. So it's going to be a big decision for black as to what to do here. Probably one of the biggest lessons of the game occurs right in this position, that black mishandled this position in terms of what he thought was happening. Black assumed that white was doing the correct thing, and therefore, since he was sacrificing the knight, black made the amateur mistake of assuming, well, if he's sacrificing it, then I'm not going to take it. This would not even be true if you were playing a grandmaster. For instance, suppose I'm playing a grandmaster in a game, and the grandmaster sacrifices a pawn. I can't say to myself, well, since he's a grandmaster and he took the pawn, it must be a good sacrifice, so therefore I won't take it. That logic really doesn't hold water. It doesn't make any sense, because it's very possible that the grandmaster